If I ruled the world, I love them, baby.
All right, If I Ruled the World podcast welcomes Alex That from Caffeine Academy. How are you, Alex?
Great. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thanks for coming by. How was Caffeine Academy tonight?
It was good. It's always fun. You know,
Yeah.
when you see students come in and eager to learn and just like almost following their pursuing their passions, you know, and just trying to like make progress. It's always pretty exciting.
Yeah. You know, I was telling Sam, I went to Caffeine Academy you invited me down, and it's an incredible, incredible place. And it's a place that I want you to describe in a little bit. Because what we want to do with you is go back, you know, because the name caffeine to a lot of people that are going to listen to this is going to be like, oh yeah, it was a club. It was a clothing brand. It was Caffeine Records. There was a lot to it. It was a culture, a little bit of a revolution in there. There was a lot of things to a lot of people. So as far as what it was to you, I know it must have started somewhere, but my suspicion is it started with music. And I was just curious how you first got into the music that was, you know, featured at Caffeine, whether, you know, techno and house and all that. Like, where did that first start?
Honestly, it's all about being a dreamer. You know, since I was a kid, I was a dreamer. I grew up in Levittown. Mm-hmm. And my father was a taxi driver.
Right.
Where I'm a first generation like American. My father is Argentinian. My mother's Dominican and Haitian.
Oh, pochito.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm half Dominican, but I love Argentinian food. So good.
Oh yeah.
Chimichurri.
That's right. So I was always told by my mom, like, you know, you could do anything. You know, you're you know, that one in a million. You're special. You have the gift. And I'm like, okay. You know, what are you talking about? You know. And I think she just was encouraging me and giving me the confidence because she didn't want to be like my father. And my father was a nice guy, still a nice guy, but he was driving a cab. We didn't have any money growing up, and so she always sort of encouraged me. And so I always thought that I can do anything. And as I'm getting older, and I realized that it's a mindset. So being a dreamer, hey, I wanted to, you know, I loved music. I loved dancing. I loved being the center of attention as a kid because I got a lot of attention growing up. Throwing parties, clothing. So how could I, you know, what kind of job am I going to get? Because I love all this type of stuff.
But where did you first, I mean, before Caffeine, where did you first hear? I thought I remember you telling me a story like you heard techno. And that, like, you were like, wow. And that sort of changed things before you actually were doing Caffeine. Where was that?
All right,
who turned you on to that?
It was kind of, it's a strange thing because I didn't know anything about techno music. And so it almost goes back to the dream, right? So I was thinking big, and I wanted to, like, you know, I was like a dreamer. So I hook up with my high school friend after college, and I'm like, all right, you know, what are you doing? He's like, I don't know, you know, I'm lost, I have no idea. And I'm like, well, I want to be the next, you know, Ralph Lauren. He's like, let's throw parties, and I'm like, throw parties? We threw a graduation party. His father had a nightclub. It was a gay club, and he had it for like 15 years. And,
okay.
So at the last minute, there wasn't a big graduation party for high school. So we threw this massive, massive party, and it was at his father's club. And it was a huge success. And no one even knew, you know, no one even knew or even cared, you know, if it was a gay club or not. And so we threw the party. It was great. So 4 years later, one of my high school, you know, he's my best friend from childhood. He's like, let's throw parties. And I was like, no, I want to start, you know, design clothing. I didn't even know where to start. So we rented a loft in Manhattan to throw our first party, and this is just as we're graduating, you know, college, but we didn't have money to put a deposit down. So the guy was really cool. He's like, listen, I'll save it for you, but if somebody comes in and is gonna give us a deposit, then you're out. So 2 weeks before our big party, he's like, sorry, you guys
Son of a bitch.
are out. And he was nice about it too. He's
Was
like,
this like early 90s?
this was 90.
So like Limelight was popping and all that
I
stuff?
don't even know if Limelight. I mean, it was happening, but I don't even know if it was at that stage.
At that stage,
you know. So we had no place to throw the party. So he's like, "Well, let's start at my father's club." And I'm like, he's in a gay club. You think people are going to go there? And he's like, I don't know, man. We have no other choice. So we talked to Dad. Dad's like, yeah, sure. For $5,000, you can have the club for the night. And we're like, wait, you realize that that's your son? and I've known you for 10 years.
Yeah.
He's like, look, you guys want to do it? It's $5,000. So Kevin and I, just started hustling. Like, who do we know? Like,
That's
who
crazy.
do we know that we can get money for? So Kevin found this kid. I don't know where he got the money from. We found out later how. It was pretty crazy. And so he gives us $5,000, right? So here I am, the college kid thinking I'm a businessman. I take out my marble notebook, all right, and I write this little agreement. I'm like, all right, we're giving you $5,000. The first money comes in, you get paid first.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we'll split it 50-50. But it's only this one night only. And he was like, all right, no problem. I made him sign it and everything else. So we give the father the money. He was like, oh, all right. So we had the nightclub. We bought a bunch of kegs. It was all you can eat, all you can drink.
Okay.
All you can eat, really. We just bought like heroes and some pasta. No one really
It's a
ate.
little bar with the 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah. And it was all like, I think we got like 20 kegs of beer or something like that. And it was all college music. And it was torrential downpour that night. But we ended up getting a couple of hundred people there. Mm-hmm. So his dad was pretty impressed that we were able to bring in, I don't know, I think it was like 200 people in torrential downpour.
Where was this club?
This was where Caffeine is.
Oh, that's the same location.
Same location.
Okay.
Comac, right?
It's Deer Park.
Deer Park, that's
It was
right.
on the Grand Boulevard,
Gotcha.
right across from Tanger, before it was even Tanger there. So so the father was impressed. He's like, oh, why do we do this all the time? I'm like, no, this is just a one-time deal. And then Kevin and I started thinking about it, and we're like, you know what, maybe we'll do this. But I didn't want to do this as my career because I wanted to start designing clothing and starting my own clothing brand, but I didn't really know how to go about doing it. So Kevin, who's just very, very creative, and he's just like this great personality, he's like, come on, bro, let's just do it, man. We'll start the nightclub. You can start your clothing line. We'll take over the world, man. I was like, all right, let's do it. So we speak to his dad, and we're like, all right, we're not, I don't want to be a promoter. That's not my thing. I want to build a business. I want to start my own clothing line, build a brand, and we want to do a nightclub, a record label, clothing company, and we want to like just,
start small.
Make it global. No, but we were thinking big. I mean, because again, we're both dreamers. Yeah. So the dad's like, yeah, whatever you want. Okay. So I'm like, well, we want it's 50-50, right? He starts laughing. He's like, all right. So we made some half-ass deal. Okay, it was like a handshake deal, and I'm trying to write everything down in my Mead notebook, to be all professional because I just graduated college. I was just about to graduate college.
Listen, marble notebook back then was official.
Yeah, it was, right?
Yeah.
It was like I got my marble notebook.
From lyrics to half-ass contracts, the marble notebook is where it's at.
Yes. So we made a deal with his dad that we were going to do sweat equity. We were going to work for as long as it took until we earned our equity. So it's pretty vague. So it could be a month or it could be a year. We had no idea. So we just said, all right, fine. So we weren't promoters. We became partners or on our way to becoming partners. So we threw a college party. And after we did 1 or 2 or 3 of those parties, we're like, you know what? This is not what we want to do. How do you compete with there was a club called Chevy's, and it was like a multi-million-dollar facility, and you had a basketball court in there, you had a Subway in there, you had hip hop, pop music playing. So we're this rinky-dink warehouse. Mm-hmm. So we're like, what can we do? So we heard about this DJ in Manhattan that was playing like industrial music, which again, no idea what that was at the time. This is like 91, like spring of 91. So we went into the city and we see that there was like this industrial thing happening. It was like goth and this like music like from Belgium. That was like thump, 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 thump.
Yeah.
Thump. We're like, all right, this is kind of interesting. So we try getting this DJ. He comes in. We do this alternative night called Voodoo. Yeah. And it was pretty awesome. So the first time I think I ever heard techno was with this DJ. And it was kind of interesting. We're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then we had this guy working for us. He was the maintenance dude. He was this Polish guy, and he says he looked at us and he goes, "Why don't you do techno?" No, I'm not good with accents, but
that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
And I go,
I'm sure it was just
like, what is it? He goes, well, you see what this guy's playing? It's similar to that, but it's really, really big in Europe. He's like, because he was from Poland, and he says, everybody in the UK and in Germany, and Belgium, this is what they do. It's techno, baby. And I was like, okay. So then me and Kevin were like, all right, let's get our friends from high school who are DJs, and we're all like Guido DJs, playing like freestyle. So we're like, listen, find out everything there is to know about techno, stop playing it, and we're gonna do this techno thing.
Really? So
right?
you like gave them the assignment?
Yeah.
Like, check it out. This is what you need to do.
Yeah, yeah. So we had this one DJ that was playing this like industrial music that was hard, and somebody says, well, like the Polish dude was like, this is techno. And we're like, okay, well, let's find out more about it. And we didn't even know where to find it. So the DJs were out like looking for this techno stuff, and they came back and they put together, like, we had like a listening party, and it was just a bunch of us hanging out at the club playing.
Yeah, no, that's wild too, because it's like pre-internet, pre-Google. It's like, what's techno? Oh, let me just type that up. It's like
You got to go out
you
to
had
the
to like
stores.
you had to hit the pavements, go out, check out the records. Yeah.
So like, whatever. So he comes back and he's like, so we got something for you. We got this techno thing going. That's right. So then, so some of the guys were like, all right, so this is what we got going on. So we were like, all right, well, let's do this. So it was like a couple of days or a week later, we're hanging out, Kevin and I, and we're like, you know what? I think this is it. Like, let's look at what we have, right? And we were dreamers, but we're also like realists. And like, we have this warehouse, and it's dirty, and it has a dance floor, it has a bar, it has a DJ booth, a couple of speakers, a fog machine, and a red laser. So what are we doing, right? And it was all painted white. So we're like, what if we just paint it black, put up some cool artwork, and let's do this underground thing? But just because of the fact that this is what we're working with. We didn't have money. We didn't have this fancy place. So let's do something that's different and underground. And we heard, it's happening in Europe. So let's do it. Again, not knowing anything about the scene, we couldn't look it up or anything, and we've heard, a few people that knew about it, that lived in Europe. And then we had this one DJ that was playing this industrial stuff that was similar, I guess, to this techno thing, right?
Yeah.
So we going out and we're coming up with ideas. And one night, Kevin and I were out promoting till like about 4 o'clock in the morning. And I don't drink. And even to this day, I'm not a drinker, and not that I'm against it. I just, I'm like naturally always buzzed, you know what I mean? So like, what do I need, alcohol or drugs for? So we're out promoting for, I guess, the Voodoo night, and we had like another college party night.
Where would you go to promote this stuff?
To a club called 007,
Yeah.
to Malibu, to Industry, or, out in Long Beach at the time. So I guess I was drinking a lot of soda, and at the end of the night, and we were trying to come up with like a whole concept for this techno night. So then I was like, I was about to drop him off. I'm like, he's like, what's wrong? It's like, my stomach. And he goes, oh, it's all that caffeine you drink. And I look at him. I said, that's it. He goes, what? I go, that's the name. Caffeine, the natural stimulant. And I'm like, that's it. And we went nuts. We jumped out of our car. This is 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're hugging, dancing. We were doing the Running Man. We're like, oh, yeah, we got it. Caffeine, natural stimulant. And we kept saying, caffeine, the natural stimulant, where techno rules the land. And we're like, does that even sound good? I don't know, but let's just do it. And it was just incredible.
Were
and
you
then,
like trying to labor over a name for a while?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was like a couple of weeks. It wasn't like it was a long time. But we wanted to have this whole concept of like just creating something. Again, we're creative guys, and I didn't want to just be like a club promoter or club owner. Like, I wanted to like conquer the world, and we actually wrote it down in our meeting notebook, and I still have it, where it's like conquer the world of music, events, and fashion. First we said music, dance, fashion, and then we sort of like became a little bit more sophisticated.
Right.
Just kidding. And we said music, events, fashion, and that's what we did. We started making a logo, and we actually took like the Delight logo that was very like, it's very trippy, right?
Yeah.
And retro and stuff like that, very 60s. And then we took that and Chinese characters, and we sort of combined it together to create the caffeine logo. And I did this with this artist, and she's really, really cool. We were going back and forth for like 2 weeks, and all of a sudden, we got this great logo. And then we made some T-shirts, and we made some hats, and we made this red sticker that just said caffeine, the natural stimulant.
A lot of us on Long Island know that sticker.
That's awesome.
Picture it in my head right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then we went to this local sticker guy, and we're like, can we just print up a bunch of stickers? How much will it cost? He's like, I don't know. You tell me. And I'm like, I don't know. What's 50,000? And he's like, 50,000. I was like, we were just calculating how many colleges we could go to, how many stickers we can give out, and that was going to be our promotion. So he gave us like a stupid price. Like, it was so cheap. And we're like, all right, we'll take 50,000. And that's how we started promoting. We just put stickers everywhere. We went to every SUNY school because we knew a lot of people, obviously, who go to SUNY live on Long Island. And no one even knew what it was. And then we got lawn signs, caffeine. And that was the only people that were doing that was the people who were running, people running for office and stuff like that, or judges or whatever, the politicians.
Local sheriff.
So then you see caffeine, and then I think Newsday picked us up, and we're like, what is this? And then New York Times. So we invited them to the opening night, and it was just.
So you're doing all this before opening night?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great.
How much time did you give yourself?
We started, so we created the logo and the first T-shirt and flyer. I think it was December of 1990, and we threw December of 91, and the actual grand opening of Caffeine was March 27th, 1992.
Holy shit!
Yesterday?
That was.
Yeah, yesterday was the 27th.
Oh my
Today's
god!
the 28th.
Holy shit! How did you not
Should
come
have
in
fucking
yesterday?
done this
What?
yesterday.
Yeah, what the
Oh,
fuck? Too busy watching The Burbs.
Look at that,
That's crazy.
Alex. That.
Wow. So it was. So yeah, we just. It was so amazing working with Kevin. I mean, we were just two, best friends, and just wanted to take over the world. And but what does that really mean? We're kids taking over the world. It was just like, let's just have fun.
I don't trust anyone that doesn't have that at some point in their young life.
Yeah.
When you start a project and you don't feel like you can take over the world, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, that's why we titled this podcast "If I Ruled the World."
Yeah, look who you're talking to.
Yeah. No, but it's amazing though. I mean, we were kids with big dreams. And I'm 49 years old, and I still feel like a kid, and I still have big dreams. And
Same.
Right? I mean, nothing changes.
Nothing.
And except when you have kids and they start talking dreams, and you're like, no, focus, get your degree. And but it was a magical time, and with a really incredible person, and we just said, let's just do this, let's have fun. And we had no idea really what we were doing. We just knew that we were determined to make a difference, and to create something that really wasn't done before, and without trying to be like, I guess we were pioneers in a sense of like just and innovators, but we weren't setting out to be pioneers. We're just doing our thing. Like, I didn't really care, And the interesting thing is, like, we didn't know like who were the top DJs, who was doing what.
Right.
So we found out about this guy, Jimmy Crash, and we found out about this guy, Adam X. And then we found out, and then our guys that they were local guys, they started playing the music. And then we do this event, and we started hearing this name pop up, like, Frankie Bones. And we're like, this guy sounds pretty cool, That's a great name, Frankie Bones, right? So I guess it was opening night of Caffeine. There's like a whole group of guys from Brooklyn. We couldn't believe that. Like, we're in Deer Park, Long Island.
Yeah.
And we had people coming from like, I mean, way, way, way out east to like Brooklyn.
Yep.
And we're like, what? We had a line around the building, and Kevin and I were like excited, like just jumping up and down. And then we were nervous. And then it was all kinds of crazy emotions. And then we knew that we invited the press to come. And meanwhile, we're 21 years old,
right?
Maybe 22 at the time.
How big was the staff inside?
Oh, it was pretty big. I mean, we might have had like 40 people, between security and bartenders and barbacks and promoters and stuff like that, hosts. And we tried being innovative. So like we had, we had all kinds of stuff going on without even, whatever we were dreaming about, so we had, the entrance was in the back, right? The front entrance was in the back of like the warehouse. And then the exit was in the front. So when you left, we were thinking like, let's create like a Disneyland for adults. And like you're going through this maze and it's different rooms and different music and different energy. And then all of a sudden when you leave, you don't even know where you are. You're like, wait, where am I? Like, what is going on here? So it was pretty magical. So all of a sudden we had people from Brooklyn and they're like, I'm with Frankie Bones and I'm with, like, I brought Brooklyn with me and I'm thinking like, what does that mean? Like, I didn't know what Frankie Bones, I hearing this name, but I didn't know who he was. And then, so this guy comes over, big personality, heavy, we have the Long Island accents. He's got the Brooklyn accent. He's like, yeah, I'm Frankie Bones. And I was like, what's up, man? I'm Alex, Yeah. And I didn't know really who he was. And he's like, we've been doing this for about, I don't know, 6 months now or a year now, And I said, good, we've been doing this for about an hour. And I'm like, that's
We're
cool.
all caught up.
Like, yeah, it's awesome. And I don't know what he was talking about. You know what I mean? Like, we've been doing this, like, just don't get it wrong. We were doing it before you. And I was like, all right. So and I don't know if he was joking around or what, but, he had this whole crew. So we and then someone was telling me, no, this is like the DJ that you have up there, this guy Adam X, that's his brother. And his brother's like the one who started this thing. And, and he's like the man. I was like, oh, all right. So do I charge him? Like, yeah, I didn't know. I mean, so we didn't charge him and he wanted us to bring, get all of his friends in for free. And I was like, no, that's not happening.
Right.
So all of a sudden I became like the guy, who's the reputation of like being the business guy. Meanwhile, am I really a business guy?
That's fucking opening night, man. You got to count some heads.
Yeah, listen, we were nervous. We got to make some money.
You got 40-person staff you got to pay.
Yeah, and we got an extra laser.
Island.
No, listen, we got more speakers, we got more lights. Right. Because we wanted to do it right, and we did spend like a lot of money in like just making the atmosphere amazing. We were giving out T-shirts, we're giving out stickers and lollipops, and we had all this cool artwork. We created a barbershop inside where if you wanted you wanted to like get your hair buzzed, if you wanted to get braids, or you wanted to like put beads in your hair, you had that, and it was free. We had all different things happening, and local DJs and DJs from Boston, from where else? Obviously from Brooklyn. From Baltimore, and and it was just a fun thing. We converted the hot dog truck into which like the psychedelic truck that had become outside of the outdoor patio that became known as like like the magic bus.
Magic happened in that bus.
Yeah, a lot of magic and a lot of experimental things I think happened in that bus.
Yeah.
So again, we're dreaming. We're bringing in DJs. That were into this type of music. And as we realized that this wasn't just happening here on Long Island, that obviously it was happening in Brooklyn, it was happening in Detroit, in San Francisco, in Miami, it was happening in all these different areas at the same time, but we had no idea. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like you could start, looking things up and you had no idea, like what was happening, but there was a movement happening in that time and everyone was on the same page.
It's weird that you tapped into it so blindly, but happened to be on the same page as all this stuff, like Frankie Bones said when he walked in, that they've been doing it before you. But you tapped into this thing. You could have done anything that night. And
yeah, you could have kept it industrial. Yeah. You could have, discovered polka or some shit.
Yeah. No, it was definitely, I don't know if it was the universe or if it was just everything was aligned at the same time. And
it would have been easier for you to be 007 or Malibu or Chevy's, looking for money to pay back, and
to pay back, or to like you said, to fund the clothing line that you wanted to start, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, what's cool about just being creative and being a dreamer is that there's no limits, you know. And I can't tell you the amount of people that were sort of making fun of us or saying, "What are you doing?" I mean, it's a warehouse. It's like, what is this, like computer music? It's electronic music. Like, it doesn't make sense. There's no words. There's no, and I'm like, it's a feeling, you know. It's a vibe, you know. And we just went with it. So we had the music, you know, we had the dancing, we had like the fashion, and we created this pretty cool atmosphere, and everybody lived it. Like everyone came together, and you had skaters, right? You had Guidos, you had like the gay community, you had like rock and roll dudes that converted into like industrial heads that started like checking this out, like goth kids, and you had like just typical like sports, like got kids, you know, I'm saying kids, whatever, like, you know, people that went into like sports, you know, typical athletes who are like, I will try this, you know. And then we started educating people where we weren't being like, we didn't let certain people in because if they had like the typical tank tops and the typical like, you know, the Guido tank tops and stuff like that. We're like, listen, we're not trying to be mean or anything, but this is not the right look. You know, like certain like leather jackets or that were just too intrusive, or super baggy pants, or like cross color stuff. Like, it's not about that. You know, just be yourself, but don't overdo it. You know, like, and people started just coming in and changing, like, you know, like their look or their feel, being softer, and realizing that it's not about like, you know, just flexing your muscles or wearing, like, you know, girls wearing super tight clothing. It was a vibe. It was, you know, and, you know, we had like club kids there, you know, before the whole like, you know, trans thing was even like a thing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we had people that working for us, you know, that were just dressing up, and it was incredible, you know, like, and so you had people looking at them going like, I can't make fun of them. They're running the front door.
Right.
They're deciding whether or not I come in, you know. And it was like, you know, these guys dressed in drag, and that wasn't like a popular thing back then. And, you know, we just tried pushing the envelope and just educating people on. At the end of the day, it was just be respectful, you know. It just be nice, be open, and just dance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like enjoy the music, and it just started growing and growing from there. It became a movement, I think, in a sense, because people were so passionate about it, and that nobody was judged, and you felt significant when you walked in those doors at 836 Grand Boulevard. You felt special. You felt significant. You felt a part of something, and that is a great thing. Everybody wants to feel significant and feel good. And when you listen to the right type of music, it gets you in the right frame of mind. And everyone was so positive.
Yeah.
Basically creating a type of utopia in some way, like everywhere everyone gets along for like that night for those few hours, right?
Oh yeah. And
it was like one night a week,
yeah,
right?
it was Friday nights.
Friday
nights.
Yeah.
And it was never any problems. I mean, like when we had like the typical college night, there would be like, you know, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 fights a night, you know, over a girl, over a beer, over here. Somebody would bump into somebody and like, oh, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Cool, man. No worries, you know. And everyone was so friendly, and it was just enjoying the atmosphere. And there was never any fights, you know. It was all about the music. It was all about dancing. It was all about the vibe, and it was so cool. So Kevin and I were thinking, just, this is amazing. Like how do we do more of this? So we started designing, you know, clothing. We started just giving out clothing to all the people that stood out, like the ones who jumped on the speakers and started dancing. The DJs that came from all around. We had DJs coming from Europe, from the West Coast, you know, just up and down the East Coast.
That's crazy. So
yeah.
the news got out to Europe, or like did you reach out to them?
Well, no, I think some of the European DJs that were coming into like Baltimore had a good scene going on.
Oh yeah, then they just hit
Detroit.
Yeah.
And then word started spreading with like the people who had like the clubs that we did. Word started spreading that if you're going to New York, you stop at, I guess, Caffeine, then you go to Boston, Avalon, you go to Fever in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a cool thing, and people started hearing about us, and then it was wild. Yeah, it was crazy.
And that was, so Caffeine is first as the club.
Yeah.
And then what comes next after that? Was it the clothing or the clothing store?
So no, it
Or
was
the record company?
Yeah, it was the record company. So the club, Caffeine and the whole thing was about 91, 92. And then we started making T-shirts up and putting out, making music, or at least attempting to make music in 92. And then in 93, we put together like a CD sort of compilation of our DJs, putting together some tracks. And then the funny thing is like, I grew up listening to like hip hop and stuff. So I was like, hip hop, and I always saw what like a lot of the hip hop guys did. So, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So we put together a CD compilation of all like trance and, techno stuff. So I go to, first stop was Tower Records. So I go to Tower Records and I have a box of CDs, in the trunk. And this is typical when you hear like those hip hop guys like, yeah, so, I have, but the CDs, I'm selling in the trunk of my car. So yeah. I did the same thing. So I go to Tower Records in Massapequa and in by Roosevelt Field. It was in I guess in Westbury. So I walk in and I'm like, hey, do you guys buy CDs? And they start laughing at me like, no, that's corporate. It's in California, dude. You're not gonna sell, And then they go, well, you know what? Talk to Mike. He does consignment deals. So I walk over to Mike, and Mike shakes my hand. He goes, hey, what's up, man? And he recognized me. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I go, hey, I'm Alex from Caffeine. He goes, I know who you are. I go to Caffeine and Voodoo, every week. I'm like, no way. I go, look, I got these CDs. He's like, say no more. Give me 10. This is how it works. Drop off the 10 CDs. I'll call you when they sell. We sell them for 20, and I'll give you $10, a CD. I'm like, all right. So I'm driving home, right? And then like, I think I got my phone number was on the CD, and it was also on like the T-shirts, and it was my home phone number.
Right.
So, we didn't really I don't think we had beepers back then.
Yeah,
Your
that's
answer
right.
machine.
1, 4, 3, and 6, 9.
Right? Like, yeah. Like, so the crazy thing is I come home and there's a voicemail, on my answer machine, and it was Mike, the consignment guy, and goes, "You're not gonna believe this. We just sold like." I think it was like 6 or 7 CDs. He's like, come back, drop off more. So long story short, we ended up selling about 2,000 CDs.
Wow.
In between the one location in Manhattan and the one in Westbury and the one in Massapequa Park. Oh, Massapequa, yeah. Yeah. So then we realized, you know what? We're DJs. We're not really... We should be making vinyl. We should be like, making records, put them on a vinyl and selling them to DJs all over. So then instead of doing the CDs, we started doing vinyl. And that was kind of fun. So we started making vinyl up, and then we started hearing about, oh, there's a distributor that distributes, all over the world. And we're like, all right. So then we brought it to them, and they're like, yeah, we'll take a couple. Took 100, 200, 300. Before we're selling, a couple thousand 12 inches. Like around the world.
Wow.
And even like Japan was buying a couple, not a lot. But
Yeah, sure. I mean, the fact that they would buy any, like that's how, like if you could get your music to Japan, like,
it was
who would ever think that?
It was nuts.
Yeah. What year was this?
This is 93 going into 94.
And there was also a thing you did a deal with, you were telling me the other day about Sonique.
Yeah, that was a few years later. So the funny thing is I like to move forward, right? Mm-hmm. I love like music and clothing and stuff like that and fashion. So like I guess I always like use the analogy in my mind is like you can't wear what you wore last year, right? Because it's like you always have to look fresh and look new. And
Sam, like,
yeah, we're done.
No, but I mean, listen, everyone's
you. Yeah, no.
You.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, but my business mentality was like, you gotta always be fresh and you gotta move forward, right? Mm-hmm. You gotta make progress. So, the way I looked at the club and the way I looked at the music industry is, I knew that when you have your own clothing brand, every season you have to design new clothes. So let's say, there's no seasons in clubs, for the most part, but every month or every year you need to progress. You need to like up your game. And the same thing with music. If you have a record label and you're putting out the same music over and over, after a while, it's just going to be redundant.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the same. And you're not going to get new fans.
No, and eventually there's just going to be a dip.
Yeah.
It's just weak.
So, so the guys that were running the record label, great guys. They put their heart and soul into it, but they were just thinking on a smaller scale, right? So they were like buying records from people in Chicago that also could also possibly book them in Chicago. So,
Okay.
oh, listen, man, hey, this track is pretty cool. And they weren't saying, well, I'll buy this track off you and put it on Caffeine Records if you book me there. They weren't like that. They were cool guys.
Yeah.
But that's what they were doing. You know what I mean? Like they were like, oh, listen, yeah, this sounds cool. We'll put it out on Caffeine Records. And then, a month later, you build a relationship, then they fly them out,
Right.
to Chicago or Atlanta or Boston or whatever it is. So they were just building the relationships, which is great. So after a while, I was like, all right, we need some vocals. We need some percussion. We need some like a hook. We need some excitement, and a lot of times the DJs, they would like joke around with me like, oh man, you got to stay real, man. We got to stay in this trance thing. And I'm like, we got to move on. Like we have to like take trance and techno and move forward with it. So let's add a little bit more percussion. Let's add a little bit more, like a hook, so someone could remember it. Because
Sure.
if the average person who's not into the scene hears a song, how are they going to describe it to their friends? Unts, 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 unts. But if it's like unts, unts, and then you hear something like, caffeine. I don't know, I'm just making something up.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
Like you could be, hey, that caffeine song?
Yeah.
It's better than just going, oh, something that goes unts, unts, unts. So they were like, no, man, you want to go too commercial, too mainstream. Like, it's not about that. It's about moving forward. So long story short, all of a sudden, I'm like, all right, watch. I'm going to find a song. I'm going to license a song, and it's gonna kill, right? So I asked another guy who worked for me. He wasn't a DJ or producer. He was just like this, cool British guy, really nice guy. I'm like, hey, could you help me find a bunch of songs out of the UK that's forward? It's whatever you want to call it, techno, electronic dance music, breakbeat, trance, whatever genre. Just find me something that has a vocal, a female vocalist that has like an airy sort of voice, and it's a feel-good type of a song, but it's in the category, that we're doing, electronic dance music. So he finds like 10 songs, maybe 15 songs, and I listen to them, and they're all pretty good, and one of them just stood out, right? And I'm not a DJ, I'm not a producer, and I'm more of like, sort of, like more of like the audience or the consumer, right? And like a generalist, where I can listen to something, and if it makes me want to dance, I like it. I'm not going to listen to the production value and critique it to death, or critique a DJ to death. If the DJ makes me dance, he's a good DJ, right? I don't even know, like, back then, like what was incredible mixing, because it was, like if one song went to another song seamlessly, he was pretty good. All right.
Yeah.
So I wasn't critiquing, that sort of thing. Right. So, I hear the song and I loved it. I'm like, this is great. So I licensed a song. So for $2,000, I licensed, this random song. And then my guys who were running the record label, they're like, oh man, that's too commercial, man. That's not, that's not us. That's not us. I was like, okay, all right, whatever. So to prove a point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to blow this track up.
You found a song, and for $2,000, like, I guess the artist just gave you the okay to do whatever.
Gave me the rights. So I licensed it for the US, because this was a song that was out in the UK.
Did it do anything in the UK?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a,
Sure.
regular song that, no, not really. It was a good song, and it maybe just came out. I don't remember, like, when we licensed it, it might have been out for I don't know, maybe a month or a year. I don't really remember actually. So what I did was I printed 100 copies on vinyl, and I sent it out to all of the DJs who came to Caffeine in the past year. And the people who came to Caffeine were these DJs that would play on Z100 in their own cities, but around 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So they weren't allowed to be, they weren't primetime DJs. They were like the dance DJs, which nobody, like the industry, the record labels and the radio stations, they didn't really like the dance thing. They thought it was like a fad, right? They thought like this techno, electronic dance music thing. They didn't even call it EDM at the time. It's just a fad. It's going to go away.
Anything is a fad, like whether it's hip hop, punk, hardcore, the stuff that we all grew up on. So
we were like, this is our life. This is not a fad. We were like, we're going to take over the world. We're going to do these big parties and clothing and all this type of stuff and music. So we gave it out to these 100 DJs from all over the country, and they started playing it on. Some of them have college radio. Some were on like the Z100s of their city, but again they were playing at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's like the biggest DJs, the biggest radio station in the middle of the night type of thing.
Yeah,
These people.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, I guess the mainstream DJs are like, oh, but that's a great song, and it started playing in prime time. So now we started getting calls because I put my phone number.
Yeah.
And this time we actually had an office, so it wasn't the house phone anymore. So we've upgraded. And so we were getting calls from the weirdest thing, Universal, Sony, I'm trying to remember who else, Artemis Records. I don't even think they're around. And so whatever, a bunch of the main Atlantic Records. So a bunch of the main record labels started calling us up and saying, is this your record? And I'm like, yeah, it's my record. So like, we love it. Let's talk. So I go into Universal Records and I speak to Monty Littman, which I think he still might even be the president of like Republic or Universal. This guy named Craig.
Sounds like a record label name.
Yeah, Monty
it?
Littman.
Monty Littman and his brother Avery.
Like head honcho.
Super nice guys. They were great guys. The two brothers, and they
Your
might.
name is Monty. You're in charge of something.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you feel?
They were in charge, all right.
With or without a cigar.
Yeah, I think without. He wasn't
No,
that
okay.
type.
Good. I hate smoking, so that's good.
And then this guy named Craig Kalman, who was like a head of, I'm trying to think, Atlantic Records. And then there was the really cool guy, I forgot his name, from Sony, like really, really cool. So it was so much fun going. And I'm thinking, oh my God, here's my chance. Caffeine Records is going to be just like Def Jam. Exactly what the man, Russell Simmons, did with Def Jam. Here we are going to do with Caffeine Records and Universal, an imprint deal. Because right now we have a nightclub, we have a record label, we have, at this point, this is like now it's skipping to like 98. We had a clothing store, a record store, and now we have a clothing brand that was selling out clothing all over the world. And it wasn't a lot. We were a small, big company because it was a niche. It was,
But it's everything that you set out to do.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Which
It was
is, you're living that dream.
without a doubt.
Absolutely. Where
So-
was the clothing store, by the way?
The clothing store was in Massapequa Park.
Okay, cool.
On Park Boulevard. And so I go in to speak to Monty Littman, and I bring this combo TV VCR. We bring in a little strobe light, for effect, and it was so corny. Looking back, it was so embarrassing. So we wanted to show him that, look, we're doing a tour. We have between 1,000 people showing up to the biggest one was in Atlanta with 15,000 people showing up to our like caffeine party, rave, whatever you want to call it at the time. So we even got Coca-Cola, which is another story, to sponsor our tour. I called Coca-Cola randomly. We had a big meeting the night before with all of our DJs and the staff. All, it was probably like 10 of us, right? Mm-hmm. And it was all friends and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, because I was running the clothing line during the day, and then at night I would go to the store, and that's where the offices were for the record label in the basement of our store in Massapequa Park. So I'd go there at night, and then they're like, all all right, Mr. City Boy. They were making fun of me because, I'm like now Mr. Corporate because I have a clothing line in Manhattan. They're like, why don't you call, we need a sponsorship because we're going to go on tour and we're going to take like, your minivan, because I think I had 3 kids or 2 kids at the time, It's like, what are we going to take, your minivan? And I'm like, all right. Who do you want me to contact? They say Coca-Cola. I was like, oh, you guys. Like, oh, yeah, no problem. I'll make the call tomorrow. But you know what? I did. I made the call.
Right.
So I make the call to Coca-Cola, and I left a message like, hi, this is the CEO of Caffeine Entertainment. And I told we have a nightclub, record label, clothing, we're going on tour. And this is something that you might be interested in. It's an underground movement that is becoming mainstream, and it's something that has not been done. And it's worth giving us a call back.
Right.
You have caffeine. We have caffeine.
It's just one big caffeine family.
It's a natural stimulant.
Exactly. So I'm telling Monty Littman and his brother Avery, and my brother was with me, and I forget who else was with me. I can't even remember. And so I'm telling them about music, events, fashion. It's a movement. And they look at me like, blowing me off. And like, can we just cut right to the chase? We want the song. I said, great, but hear me out. I'm showing them the clothing brand, completely blowing me off. I'm like, could I at least show you a video? Like, we have video. We have proof. We put out 1 million stickers.
Right.
Like, this is really a thing. So show them the video, and didn't even have the patience for it. All right, great. That's wonderful. We'll pay you $10,000 for the song. So I stood up, I shook his hand, I said, thank you very much. He said, we have a deal? I said, no effing way. And I walked out. So I was like, oh my God. Meanwhile, like, my heart's pounding. I'm shaking because that's the stupidest thing I could have done. If this was Macy's, because I was, a fashion guy more than I was a music guy, I'd be like, if you want to buy caffeine clothing, I'll just give it to you for free. But I want to prove a point to the record guys to like, I want to sell 1 million records because we've been selling 5,000, vinyl, and I want to kind of throw it in their face. I know it sounds silly, but whatever. That's what I was thinking.
Energy.
Right?
Yeah, listen, sometimes you got to be petty. It's all right.
Right? It was just like, I'm doing it. So I walk out and I realized I left the combo TV and VCR in there. So I had to
That shit's
walk.
worth about $15 today.
Yeah, I know. Back then it was probably like $300.
That's true.
A lot of money back then. So I walk in, with just like feeling like such a fool. I'm like, I forgot my TV. So I pick up this TV VCR and I walk out like dum 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 dum, and it was so awkward. And then I just left. And then so I didn't hear anything. And then the guys from the UK, they're like, listen, dude, if we can get $30,000, right? And right now we're at 10. If we get $30,000 and we split it, man, that's this is great. So I said, let me see what I can do, right? And I'm thinking, I'm not getting 30,000. I'm going for like at least $100,000. So a week goes by, nothing. Then I hear from I had another meeting with I think it was Atlantic, and they were so nice. And then the guy in Atlantic introduced me to his whole staff, and then I'm on the train maybe 2 days later, and I sit down, and it was a whole bunch of people, like cool people. And I always sit, because I'm like 6'5", so I always sit like in the first row, like in the Long Island Railroad.
Yeah.
I always sit right in front where the seat sticks out, so I can, I have like leg space, right? Yeah. So I'm sitting, and everyone's like looking at me, and I'm like, what are they looking at? And they knew that I was the guy from Caffeine, and they all said, we know who you are, man. And I was lucky enough to be on the cover. I think it was like around that same time, Newsday did a story on us again.
Yeah.
And New York Times, and it was like, oh, this is great. So I think somebody recognized me, which is kind of weird to say. And then it turns out that I went to high school with like this guy's wife, and this one knew me from here. And the guy that I just met a week earlier, he was the head of marketing. His name is Lou Playa. He was the head of marketing for Atlantic Records at the time. Okay. And he was on the train, and they all leave from Seaford. Or everyone takes like the Babylon branch, and I got on at Seaford. Maybe they got on Massapequa. I don't remember. So they're like, we know who you are. So I became friends with this guy Lou, and he's giving me all kinds of advice about the record industry. And like, listen, they don't care about dance music at all.
Right.
So if you're going to make a deal, you got to make a deal. It's like a one-hit wonder type thing because they don't care about anything else. They're not going to care about your clothing line or about you're not going to get an imprint deal. And I was like, really? He's like, yes. So he told me a couple things that I'm like, all right, you know, I believe you. So I start getting calls from Universal, and they're up to 30,000. I'm like, call me when you're serious. Click. And I hang up on him. I mean, well, I felt great. I'm like, I can't believe I'm telling this to like these guys, and they're like superpowers, you know? I mean, they can make someone's career.
Right.
But remember, I didn't really care.
Still don't care about it. It's not your...
No. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's, you know, I want to do the right thing, but I could hold out. You know? So I hold out till $100,000. And I'm like, oh my God, looking at my wife going, is this real? $100,000? Like, this is insane.
From Universal?
From Universal.
Yeah.
So we have a meeting, and we're in Manhattan, and I have like this rinky-dink like attorney, and he was like this short Italian dude, like muscular, big tie, super tight suit, and he's like, I got this, man. I got this. He's like, we got Universal coming, and he's got a little small office in Soho. Right, it's a mess. Right,
Yeah.
He's got files. There was no file.
yeah.
It was just like his desk was like one big file. You know, so he's all excited, and so they come in, and I got this great advice from Lou Playa from Atlantic Records. So he's like, just remember, they don't care about you. They don't care about anything. They just care about the song, and they'll pay whatever it is for that song. So I'm having like heart palpitations. My knees are shaking because I want to play cool and be like, I want more money, right? So
It's a three-way split. You got to pay the lawyer. You got to pay, you know, there's
but
some hands.
it wasn't even about the money. It was about
Proving your point.
yeah. More than anything, because seriously, I didn't care about the money because what's the difference? Like, you know, I was making a little bit of money. I wasn't making that much, but I was making some money, and it's like, who cares? I'm happy. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm healthy. I have a great wife. I have 3 awesome kids. Who cares? Like, I wasn't like, I got to squeeze in, but it was more about just proving a point of like, I just got a crazy deal, and we're going to sell. Like, my whole thing is, I'm going to sell 1 million records. I don't care how much I make. I don't care if I made $100 or, I mean, obviously it would be nice to make $1 million, but I didn't care. It was all about selling 1 million records so I can have this little notch in my belt to say I sold 1 million records. So I sit there and I'm like, how am I going to approach this? And I'm like shaking, right? So I said, hey guys, I'm having second thoughts, right? And I'm like, I just don't know. I don't know how to say it, but I'm having second thoughts. What are you talking about? It's the night before Thanksgiving. Like, we're here to make a deal. And I'm like, look, I've been thinking about this. You guys do everything for the hip hop guys. You give them gold. You give them girls. You give them drugs. You give them cash. You give them everything that they want. And, you know, I know it's a better
What about
genre.
my culture?
Like, I know it's a better, like, you know, you think it's a better genre and you think it's, but like, I remember you offered me $10,000 and you was just like, this, you dismissed everything. You know, I told you I had a tour. I told you I had this movement, and you didn't care. So I don't care. I don't think I want to do this deal. What are you talking about? We're here to make a deal. We're not leaving unless we make a deal. I'm like, all right. So they go.
Once you hear that, do you feel okay inside?
I was tingly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But now here's the thing. Like, I always smile. Like, you know, I'm just a happy person. Mm-hmm. So I felt my cheeks shaking, right? And I felt I was getting all red. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to see that I'm full of it, man. You're like there's something behind. Like, what am I doing? Because I'm not this tough business guy, right? So I said, so I'm thinking like, what am I going to say? What's the magic number? So I kind of closed my eyes for a second and I'm like, And I look up and above Monty's head, and I'm not kidding around, I see these numbers and I'm trying to like focus over his head to see what it was. Like, maybe it's the universe telling me like something, you know? Meanwhile, I'm nuts, right? So I see 575. So I'm like, does that mean $575,000? I'm like, screw it. I go, 575,000.
Oh my God.
And they go, what? And they get up abruptly. My attorney goes, hey, hold on a second. He's just kidding around. So I told my attorney, shut the F up. And he's like, I go, this is my deal. It's $575 or nothing. So they get up and they start walking out. And then the attorney's like, whoa, wait, hold on. And then I'm like, they're not walking out. They're just talking. And he goes, yeah, we're not leaving. We're just walking out. We're gonna talk in the hallway. So I told my attorney, I'm like, shut your mouth. You know, like, so they come back in and they go, you got yourself a deal. So I was like, oh my God. So I'm trying not to be, you know, my cheeks like, you know, just bursting. Like, you know, it's all red and the twitching.
What the fuck were they going to do with the song? They were just going to take it and just like...
I have no idea. They were going to blow it up. But see, but I also knew, because the guy from Atlantic Records said, the more they pay, the more they're going to promote it.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, cool. I understand. And then he told me something that which I totally forgot. So when they came in, I said, oh, wait, I forgot to tell you the most important part. And then my attorney's like, what now? You're going to ruin this deal. I said, I didn't even know what this meant at the time. So this is the guy, Lou Playa, telling me this. So I said, wait, there's one more thing. So like, what? Right? So I said, I want 2 points on the single and 1 point on the album. And they go, you got to be kidding me. They look at each other, the two brothers, and they're like, fine, you got it. We got yourself a deal. I'm like, can we go home? It's Thanksgiving tomorrow. I said, yep, no problem. And I'm like thinking, so when do I get the money? Like, I had no idea. I'm like, are you gonna?
Next?
Am I getting cash?
The guy with the briefcase.
I'm like, yeah, it's like a guy.
Hold on.
Hold on a second.
Where's
Yeah,
Monty?
yeah.
Where Monty?
Monty, where's your assistant? You know, like, I had
Let's
no
make
idea.
a deal.
So I had no idea. Like what? So then,
Holy shit! It is Monty. Let's make a deal. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
wow.
3-chord Monty.
So they leave and they go, we'll have our attorney call your attorney. I go, make sure I'm CC'd on this email. And my attorney was like, thanks a lot. Because I didn't have faith in him at that point. Because I'm like, oh, man. So it wasn't Thanksgiving. It was like, you know, the week after we get an email and a deal memo and stuff like that. And it was incredible. We got $575,000. And we got, what I found out was like 2 points meant like 20% of the profits of the single and then 10% of the album, because they wouldn't give you 20% of the album because the album costs more money. The singles are only like, you know, $2 or $3 for a single at the time. So I'm
just picturing every like hardcore and punk rock singer that wrote good songs just like charging $5 at the door, angry with life. That's amazing.
So to me, remember, I'm not an artist, right? So if you're a DJ or if you're an artist, it's so personal, right? And like, you know, you're gonna make a deal no matter what. You'll sign your life away. I'm not talking about now. Maybe people do it now. I don't know, but you know, if you're an artist and you don't have, like, you don't care. You just want to get your stuff out there.
Yeah, we have this conversation almost every podcast.
Like, it doesn't matter. And like, you know, if it was the clothing, because the clothing part, I was the artist, I was the designer, so I would have given it out for free.
Right.
So when it's your baby and it's your heart and soul, it's much, much more difficult to be a business savvy person.
Like that, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you do it
Absolutely.
for nothing.
Yeah, you just get it out there. You're like, all right, people are gonna hear this, right? I get $5.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was incredible. I mean, we ended up, you know, just making lots of money with that. It was incredible. That funded our tours. That funded, like, you know, our record label for the next, you know, 3 years or maybe longer. I don't even remember. And it was so cool. So now I became friendly with the attorney from Universal because he was like, I love the way you handle yourself with, you know, with the brothers, because I wasn't arrogant, I wasn't cocky, but I got what I wanted, and I guess I did it in a funny-ish, charming way without insulting them.
Yeah.
Because they really insulted me in the beginning, and I told them that they insulted me, but not in a bad way. So the attorney, I guess, respected me and liked me. He's like, man, I like you, man. So it's 5 years in, and he called me up. He's like, yeah, I'm about to send you a check, or maybe I called in to see, you know, what was going on with the check. So he says, let me look into it. So he calls me back and he goes, yeah, I have a check here. You know, it just won't let me print. It's like a $40,000 check, and this is like 5 years in. So he calls me back and goes, I got bad news. I go, what? He goes, your attorney's a moron. And he goes, you're not going to believe this, but the oldest trick in the book is we do a deal. If it's a good attorney, well, we do a 5-year deal. If it's a good attorney, he crosses it out and writes in perpetuity. So you get royalties for the life of the record, forever. So if he's a schmuck attorney, he doesn't notice, and after 5 years, you're done. So after 5 years, I was done, getting royalties. And I was like, oh, all right. Now, meanwhile, how could I complain?
Yeah, it's a good ride.
I mean, I bought the thing for $2,000. I probably, that song alone, after royalties and splitting, with the artist, I probably made, $300,000 to $400,000. Like, come on. I mean, like,
how many stories are there like that? I mean, is that something that's normal, like where someone will buy a song from like another country and license it? I mean,
honestly, I have no idea.
Who knows? But a lot of them probably too will settle at 10 and 20, and because you're like, hey, I spent $2,000, I spent $1,000. If you get 10 grand, if you get 50 grand, that's great. Do they hold out for $575,000? Probably not.
Yeah,
wild. That is one hell of a story.
And by the way, what was the name of the artist in the song? Because I'm going to put a link to it at the bottom of this. What was it? Get to the whole thing without the name.
It was Sonique. It Feels So Good.
Yeah.
And that song, it's still to this day, it makes me want to dance. And the hook is incredible. And I can't sing, and I'm not going to sing it now, but it feels so good. And that's kind of like what I'm all about. Like just feeling good and just trying to put that positive energy. And it's so fantastic that after all these years, it's still a great song. And sometimes I kick myself, for not having the right attorney because the song is still being played, But you know what?
Yeah, because I didn't know. He played it George played it for me, and I was like, I don't know this. And then when the hook kicked in, I was like, oh shit, I totally know this.
Yeah. It's a great song. Even to this day, it's a great song. And I don't know the exact numbers because after 5 years, I wasn't part of like the inside group, with Universal. But it definitely hit 1 million records sold.
Wow.
And
Jesus.
and it felt so good.
Checking the box.
It felt so good. Yeah. And the one thing more important than making that money, it's besides listening to that song today, and it still gets me all like tingly, what I mean, and makes me feel so good. No, actually, pun intended. It's just having that notch in my belt that I put my mind to something, and even if it was proving a point, to the guys of like,
to the guys, and back then you couldn't send a mass text, right? So like when that deal gets made, like would you individually call everyone and you're like, hey, by the way, like I mean, because it really like to summarize back, you just maybe suggested that they throw vocals on some of those tracks. That's basically what it was. So how did they feel knowing that? Like, was it like more of like a funny thing or?
No, I didn't even throw it in their faces. I just said, look, I want to go forward, doing vocals. And even when that song came out, I think they were more embarrassed about it. And like, I want to sign things. Like the next song that came out that was pretty cool was Better Off. Was it Better Off Alive? Better Off, that song, I can't sing it. Better Off something. It was another great song around 1999, 2000. And there was a certain, I don't know if I want to call it a genre, but a certain feel of a song that I wanted to be on the record label, and those guys didn't agree. So I was like, all right, you keep doing what you're doing. And then eventually the money just dried up, and a couple of years later, I'm like, look, I got to close up shop. You guys are running the record label and there's no more money, and I'm not taking the money that we're making from the clothing line and investing into the record label. I put all the money from the sponsorship for the tour because Coca-Cola ended up giving us money, for a couple of years to do this amazing tour.
Yeah.
And we put it all into the tour. The same thing with the money that we made from Sonique, I put it all into the record label. And these guys did their best. Honestly, they did their best, but maybe their vision wasn't as grand as mine. And maybe they thought that I was just jumping on the next thing, which I was. I was moving forward. I was making progress. So that's kind of what happened. Just sort of fizzled out. But
I think you left it right around the time, like Napster was probably popping around that
Yeah,
time.
to have a
and-
record label
Yeah.
much longer than that.
yeah,
You
yeah.
just, yeah,
So the focus,
it's a hobby.
so the focus then, 2000, 2001, when things started to change. So like the rave scene sort of slowed down. There was this whole big expose, and the Rave Act was implemented, where if you're a promoter and you're throwing a huge party and somebody like ODs and dies, like the promoter is responsible. So now here I am building this clothing company that's started off with like 5. We had our one store, but then we're selling to other stores all over Long Island, and then started getting into Manhattan and spreading. I couldn't take a chance of something happening, and we're doing a party in Chicago, and God forbid somebody like, ODs, and they're going to say, oh, it was at a caffeine party. And then even though that we weren't the promoter, we were the name, the brand of that party,
Yeah.
still, it would have been on us. And it was too risky. And then hip hop started blowing up. Eminem was making fun of techno,
Yeah.
and so that scene sort of like fizzled a little bit. So we had to reinvent ourselves with the clothing line and the music, and my guys didn't really want to evolve on the music side, and there wasn't enough money to continue. So we sort of like stopped that. And some of the guys are still mad at me. It's like 20 years later, and they're mad because I gave up on the record label. I mean, it's business.
Yeah.
And I've heard, that, oh, you're moving on to bigger and better or different. Yeah, it's business,
Right.
So we evolved the clothing line, and instead of being known as a rave company, we started doing just whatever was trending, sort of skate. It was like Abercrombie meets Diesel. And then we started, from the bottom again. But the ride from 91 to 2001 with the clothing was incredible.
Yeah.
We started off giving clothing to
The best dancers.
the best dancers, and then the best DJs. And then they were going back to, San Francisco, Orlando, or this one, that one, wearing a caffeine T-shirt or caffeine pants with reflective straps hanging out.
Walking like billboard.
Yeah, we had these great caffeine record bags where you can actually hold like 90 12 inches and your headphones. And even before there was a cell phone, you could hold your beeper in there.
That's it.
It was crazy. So we went from selling to 5 stores on Long Island to Manhattan to certain cities that the DJs were from. And then before I know it, we had chain stores that were coming in and asking and saying, can we carry your line? And it was local chain stores like Scream. They had a bunch of stores all over Long Island, New Jersey. And there's a store called Hot Topic that came.
Yep.
They had like 40 stores at the time, and they went from 40 stores to like 800. And we grew with them. The CEO of that company, his name was Orv Madden, coolest guy ever. Big CEO. He went public, tons of money. He goes in wearing shorts, surfs, skates, and he was like in his, at the time, I don't know, 40s or...
Amazing.
Cool guy. He hired the coolest people. He hired ravers and goths and you name it, and built this, multi-billion-dollar business. And he took care of the brands like Caffeine. That he believed in us. And we went from selling to, a handful of stores to, at one point, Caffeine was selling to 3,500 locations worldwide.
Wow.
And it was, multi-million-dollar business, and it was a dream come true. We did a tour in Japan one time. I'll never forget it. And I get on the microphone, I'm like, and this is in Osaka, and we did Tokyo and then Osaka, and I don't remember how many thousands of people were there. It was, I don't want to exaggerate, but it was a few thousand people there, right? And I'm like, thank you so much for having Caffeine out here. I'm the founder of Caffeine Culture. I'm the founder of Caffeine Culture. Thank you for coming. And they start chanting, caffeine, caffeine. I was like, it's actually caffeine, guys. And they're chanting. I look back, and there was like our DJs, like Vicious Vic. It was Frankie Bones, a couple other guys, and they're wearing Caffeine. And I got choked up, and I'm like, this is it. This is what I've been dreaming about. I want to go global. It was like 10 years earlier. I was pinching myself. I had a lump in my throat, I think a tear in my eye, and I'm looking in the corner, and there was like a caffeine store set up, a makeshift store set up with like these Japanese girls selling it. Now, when you're at a concert, you're selling a T-shirt, you just, put it in a ball, you throw it to somebody, $20. Mm-hmm. They would package it. They would have it, folded. They would have stickers that said, peace, love, and techno, mm-hmm. and caffeine loves you, whatever it was. We had all these stickers in this bag, and they opened up the T-shirt like if it was, this $1 million T-shirt. The way they packaged things in Japan, and that helped us too. So it was just this incredible moment where time just stopped, and I looked around. It was like slow motion, and you see people going like, "Wow, caffeine." I'm looking at the DJs and they're smiling, and I'm like, I'm about to cry. I'm about to lose it. And I go home with a ton of money in my pocket, the most incredible experience, and realizing that, wow, like we made it.
That's worldwide.
Like we made it.
So, yeah, because you have your mom who supported the dream, and then you had your dad who is maybe keeping you grounded. What did they think about stuff like this? My mother, she passed away 6 years ago, and from the day, my earliest memory to the day she died, she always just said, "I'm so proud of you. You're one in a million." I think most parents, if they like their kids, will say something like that. Yeah. And so she was always a huge supporter, and my father will always say the same thing, like, "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you." He was a taxi driver, so anything I did, like, trumped what he did. So he's like, "Hey man, like, do the opposite of me. Yeah,
I can't help you." So they were always proud. I was lucky to have parents that just encouraged me in all my crazy dreams. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel like they were stupid, even though most of them were. But I didn't feel that way. They always encouraged me. Even when I dressed weird, I always had the weirdest haircuts. Like I got trendiest in high school. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? I dressed weird, right? But they didn't, maybe they cared, but they just like, all right, let him wear big orange pants or big yellow pants, you know what I mean? Let him wear like, these Jams shorts or whatever, whatever styles, were happening back then.
Skids,
yeah. So, but it was an incredible ride seeing that we were doing these tours all over. It was mostly all over the country. When I say all over the world, we did Japan, we did Spain, we did Canada, but it was mostly the U.S. But seeing that we were doing these tours all over the world, selling our clothing all over the world, people buying our music all over the world, right? It really was a dream come true, where Kevin and I going back to just the basement of his house and thinking about like conquering the world of music, dance, and fashion. It was like I always remembered every step of the way. It was a journey, right? And you dream big, but every step of the way, for the most part, we enjoyed it. In the beginning, when you're hustling, and you're looking to break $1 million in sales, and 2 million, and then 5, and then 10, and so sometimes it's all about you just hustling and you're not really appreciating it. But I'd say 90% of the time, I was able to enjoy the journey. And it was fascinating. I mean, all kinds of people. And one of my favorite stories is, you guys know Nikki Sixx?
Of course.
Of course. Crew. I was just listening to him today, actually. He was on a podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just saw the documentary.
And, of course, The Dirt.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's so good.
I'm dying to see it. Yeah. So I was at a trade show in Vegas with Caffeine, with the clothing line. And the buyers from Hot Topic, coolest store, ever. They came up to me and they go, "We have a big fan. We have somebody that wants to meet you." So I'm thinking, all right, it's a customer that loves caffeine, right? Yeah. And it was a customer that loves caffeine. The customer happened to be Nikki Sixx, right? So we're at the Hard Rock Cafe in Las Vegas at the Round Bar, where all during Fashion Week or the trade show, during that week, everybody just hangs out there, right? So I'm there, and the Hot Topic buyers were so cool. Like, we want you to meet, big fan. So I'm thinking it's gonna be like, this really cool rave kid, right?
Right.
It's Nikki Sixx. He's like, "Hey man, I'm Nikki. I'm a big fan. I have all your, your caffeine I go, are you kidding me? I'm like, you're Nikki Sixx, man. Motley Crue, like, oh my God. People coming up to him, asking for his autograph. He's like, yo, can't you see? He's like, I'm talking to my friend. I'm like, could you just, give me some time, give me some space. And he was so cool to them too.
Sure.
Yeah.
We talked for like an hour and a half. We talked about business. We talked about like personal growth. Because, like I'm always about, motivating. And, I've been speaking at high schools, middle schools, and colleges for free for the last 25 years because I just, love doing it. He's like, man, that's awesome. He was telling me about, he's married to Donna, like she was in Baywatch. Okay. He's telling me like personal things about that. He's like, yeah, it's it's kind of tough being married to her. She's gorgeous and telling me like all these things. And we just hit it off. The most amazing conversation. He's like, seriously, man, I really, I'm a big fan. I love what you did, in the rave scene, and you took it to a whole nother level with the clothing, and I think it's amazing. And I'm like, dude, I think you're amazing. And he's like, thanks. Like, and it was just, and that was it.
Sure, because he's a super driven guy. I mean, he's the reason for the most part that band existed. He wrote everything. Like he was the RZA. And
he got
Jizza.
clean, stayed clean, and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, great guy. And then a few other things that happened that was so cool. Like during the journey of building the brand, one time it was a Saturday night. I'm home with my wife. We just put the kids to bed, a couple hours earlier, watching Saturday Night Live. And then there was a segment where they were making fun of like the rave scene. Mm-hmm. And this is not the recent one. This is like going back like, late 90s. And Jim Brewer was on, and he's wearing a Caffeine shirt.
Oh man!
And they're like, they're like playing techno, and then he's got a pacifier in his mouth. He's like, and he's just totally grinding his teeth, and he's just doing the hand gestures, and he's dancing like a raver, and he's just like going crazy, and he's wearing a Caffeine T-shirt. And I was just like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Long Island right there,
like,
Jim.
This is unbelievable. And even little things like this where you just have to pinch yourself and be like, wow, like we created this. Yeah. This is amazing. I get a call from this woman. She says, oh, Brittany, loves your clothing, and she's doing a photo shoot, and could you just send it to to this address, like Indiana, blah 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 blah. So I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And she told me exactly what she wanted from the catalog. So then I'm like, yeah, no problem. She's like, overnight it. Here's my FedEx information, blah, blah, blah. So the next day she calls. She's like, what happened? I didn't get it. And I'm like, wait, you were serious? Britney Spears? And she's like, yeah, we're doing the photo shoot. It's tomorrow. Like, that's why I told you overnight so she can fit it. And I'm like, oh, meanwhile, I thought it was a joke. Like, why would Britney Spears, call me up? And so sure enough, it was real. And then all of a sudden, another couple weeks later, NSYNC, in their first ever appearance on the Disney Channel, they're all basically wearing Caffeine. It was crazy, and they bought it at a store called Venus and Mars in Orlando. They walked in, they liked it, they bought it, and then 6 months later, I think Britney Spears introduced them to, she brought them out on MTV, the MTV Music Awards. Mm-hmm. And a couple of guys were wearing the Caffeine pants. And I'm like, this is crazy. And they were the biggest thing, NSYNC, Britney Spears.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was.
And so like when you see like some of these celebrities wearing your clothing, TV shows, some of the movies, when they were like sort of emulating what was happening, with the underground youth culture.
Right.
And them using Caffeine, it was like, wow,
crazy.
This is incredible.
It was just brings you back to you and Kevin taking over the world.
Yeah.
It's
it was an amazing journey, and looking back, I can't believe like that we did that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's somebody else's life.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you try to create something that makes a difference, and you did. Yeah. Like you put something out there. What I find is like super impressive. Like you said, you wanted to do the clothing, the music, and all that other stuff, and then it happened. But I mean, what a journey completely, And then from where you were, like renting out the gay nightclub to like where it went. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And you know what's interesting is that so again, it's always about dreaming and doing stuff, and all the things that I loved in my hobbies, music, throwing events, clothing, those industries from like 2002-ish to just recently have been terrible. Like the music industry just took a nosedive, right? I mean, you guys, you all know that, right? All of a sudden, no one's buying music, no one's buying records or CDs or anything like that. So that just sort of like, took a nosedive. The events for the longest time, especially the electronic dance music events, were non-existent except for like a couple of people that were doing it, and from Pasquale to Disco Donnie, they continued the whole entire time, but no one else did. Everyone was like, I'm not throwing these parties, these raves, and they continued. So I didn't want to take that chance, and then all of a sudden it comes back, and it's not electronic dance music anymore. It's not techno. It's EDM.
EDM,
and they're not raves. They're festivals.
Yeah.
And it just changed. And then everyone was like, oh, okay. So there was no bad press because they weren't raves, even though it's the same exact thing. It was just packaged differently. So all my interest, clothing business changed completely. It's all about Target and Walmart, and like you either are a massive brand like Gucci, Chanel, like the massive brands, or you're just like a retailer like an Abercrombie that has their own brand. There's no middle, or you're a tiny brand that you sell online, and you do okay, but we were a small big brand, and that just got wiped out.
Yeah.
So all the things that I loved sort of just took a nosedive. So I had to sort of reinvent myself. So about 6 years ago, I ended up losing everything. Like the clothing business just took a nosedive. Years earlier, the record label,
right.
And I stopped doing like the big events because I was afraid of the liability. So I was like, all right, who am I? Like, what am I going to do?
Right.
Like I'm caffeine, but what is caffeine? So losing everything and going back to like really who you are and the soul searching. And I realized that I want to make a difference in people's lives. I was always thought of myself as like an innovator. So what can I do and what could I give back? What could I do to make a difference in society that no one else can do like me? And I'm thinking and I'm like, I have no idea. And I've always loved like helping people and motivating and inspiring them since I'm a dreamer, but I can't snap my fingers and be Tony Robbins.
Right.
So I was like, all right, what if I start an academy where we teach people how to DJ? We teach them how to produce music, maybe how to make videos.
It's a great idea.
Well, thank God you said that. I mean,
I think so.
But nobody said that. Everyone's like, that's stupid. Like people who want to learn how to DJ, they figure it out on their own. And when you think about it, all like the cool people,
kids,
right?
Yeah.
Are like, I'm figuring this stuff out on my own. Same thing with producing. Like nobody wants to be told like how to do it. I'm an artist or and all the DJs were like, that's stupid. Like it took me 3 years to learn how to mix on vinyl, and then now this is with the computers, you just press, sync, and boom, it's done. I'm like, all right, everyone throws a stupid idea, but I was like, I want to help people because I have the connections with record labels or with events, people who do events and promoters and clubs. So I'm like, maybe I can sort of find the next generation of caffeine DJs. So that was like the initial thought. And then I can sort of guide them, inspire them, help them with like marketing and building their brand. So we started Caffeine Academy 6 years ago. And it was so cool because I thought we were going to get like the cool teenagers who want to be producers and DJs. And we got some of them. Mm-hmm. But we got all different types of people, from 7-year-olds to 74-year-olds.
Right.
And that blew my mind. So people who are retiring, and they said, you know what? I retired from the post office. I retired from being a UPS driver or a lawyer, whatever it is. I want to just do what my passion is, and my passion is music. So I want to learn how to DJ. I want to learn how to produce. Like, wow, this is crazy. To 7-year-olds who like coding and like music and technology, and it's like, hey, I want to learn how to make some beats. So it opened my eyes to a whole nother world. Right?
Yeah.
And then what really took it over the edge for me was we had a couple of kids that came who were special needs. One was developmentally delayed, another one, like, I think had autism. And so we treat everyone the same. All right, I'm a dreamer. You're a dreamer. Yes. What do you want to do? I want to be a famous DJ. I want to produce music. Or I want to be a YouTuber. I'm like, all right, well, so do I. Let's do it. And we have great teachers. They're not like the big famous DJs. They're just regular people that are just, they have a big heart, and they know how to communicate, and they also know how to obviously DJ, and they know all that stuff. So we found a nice group of people, and we're teaching them. We have a curriculum, lesson plans, and I had a couple of parents who said, I got to get my son out of the house. He's driving us crazy. Most likely he's not going to be able to learn. He's developmentally delayed, or he's autistic, whatever it is. And he wasn't even high functioning. I need him out of the house. He's driving me crazy. He loves music. It took a while. It took about 3 years, but they learned. And they still are amazing and incredible DJs. And they can mix, and they feel the music. Now they're starting to produce. So I started getting calls from these agencies, that the social workers and agencies, and they said, whatever you're doing is great. Because I started not only just, we were showing them how to DJ, but also how to present themselves, their posture, building their confidence, making them feel significant, and building up their self-worth. And when you look at somebody, you shake their hand and say, hi, I'm DJ so-and-so. And they started incorporating that, what they were learning in class, outside in the real world. So when they were doing volunteer work, or when they had their jobs, some of them were bagging groceries. They just had a different outlook on life, and they had more confidence. And now some of these kids are DJing at restaurants, at gyms. Some of them are DJing, in a special needs event. There's certain banks that want to hire kids with special needs. And it's incredible. Like, I never knew that this amazing community existed.
Right.
So now here I am, like, in my own little way, inspiring, creating a roadmap for success. Because my mind, even though I had all this great, sort of positive affirmation from my parents, but I didn't have any organization. They let me do whatever I wanted. So my mind was always cluttered with all these dreams, but I didn't have a roadmap to success. So here we are, where I broke it down to a one sheet for myself and for all of our students, where you have your dreams on top. And it could be a couple. It could be, 3 dreams, whatever. It could be love. It could be, I want to be a famous DJ. And it could be, I want to be a YouTuber, whatever. So we have dreams. We have 1-year goal, 3-year goals. Then we have the 5-year goals. Then we have monthly tasks that will help you become, the action items, that help you become a better DJ, producer, or, video vlogger, whatever. And then there's the weekly, sort of like tasks that you do. And then one thing that's nothing to do with that is daily habits. So I started telling them about daily habits, like be grateful. You can't be pissed off and mad or scared if you're feeling grateful. So I'm like, wake up and feel grateful. Pick anything to be grateful about. And then they're like, okay. And then I'm like, meditate. My brain never shuts off. So I try, not successfully every day, I try to meditate for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I have this app called Headspace. And
it's great.
this cool European voice is like, hey man, just relax.
It's a great starting. If you don't know what to do, I tell everyone, start with Headspace. Because they have like a free trial and all of that, and it just starts out with a little bit each day.
And it's great because I can't handle more than that. So I do 3 minutes of that. I do a little bit of exercise, and just to get me sort of like, I do some push-ups, little jumping jacks, nothing major. And then I listen to music that inspires me, or I listen to some sort of motivational things. So I try to create a roadmap for them, and it's catching on. And what's so cool is that, like, we're talking about visualizing your dream. So, for example, we had a kid who has Down syndrome. He comes in one day dressed in a suit. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm taking your advice. I'm visualizing me being a wedding DJ, and today I want to do a wedding. So I dressed in a suit. So that day we had like his class was a 2-hour class, and he basically did a wedding. He did the announcements, he played the right songs, and we did all that kind of stuff. And he felt like a champ. And I'm like, all right, so you're visualizing being a wedding DJ, and that's your goal. And he came in, and we sort of rehearsed it. And that's what we're doing with a lot of different people. We have a green screen, and they're visualizing, I want to be a DJ in Ibiza. I want to create beats with so-and-so. And so we'll do that. We'll find video footage. We'll cut, splice, we'll put it together. And
You get a hologram Kanye West in there?
Not yet. We're working on it. So
It's a hologram Frankie Bones and
yeah. So like the whole thing is, I found sort of, again, at almost 50 years old, totally reinvented myself in the last 5 or 6 years. And it was a grind. Like, it just doing this and hustling. And every year I'm contemplating, all right, is this what I'm doing? And then finally, as early as last year, it just all came together. And I feel blessed and I feel grateful that I'm helping people. But as I'm helping people, I'm helping myself. I have clarity because I feel great about helping people find their passions, pursuing their passions, and possibly, whether it's a side hustle, and making a little bit of money on the side, or whether it's their main thing. Like there's nothing better than doing what you love and making money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you found something that you're passionate about, music, business, and then you also get to help people. And I don't know, like you said, to reinvent yourself, especially late in the game, it's crazy. But I mean, when George explained to me what it was, and now just getting the overview, I think it's awesome. I drive by it all the time. I didn't know what it was. I just saw iDJ, right? On Sunrise. I'm just like, what the fuck is that? I thought it was.
Under that, the sign is Caffeine Academy.
Yeah,
iDJ, and then
iDJ now is
that's what it was.
Is the store that's been around for like 20 years. So we have our studios inside there.
Okay,
and it's great.
Yeah, I tell anybody who just go check it out. I was really, really impressed when I saw it, and the vibe in there, the teachers in there. Everybody just had like a really good, helpful vibe, and especially, what I saw with the special needs kids, the structure you gave them and something different, and everybody was just happy, and it was something very different in there.
Yeah.
So we'll put links underneath.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. It's another thing that I think is important is that we all have issues, right? Everybody, no one's perfect. So I even started sharing and opening up, to my students. Like I realized that this late in the game that I definitely have dyslexia, some sort of form of dyslexia. When people call up and they give me their information really fast, I mess up the numbers or the letters. I definitely have processing issues. Being together with my wife for 27 years, and let's say we're arguing about something, and she's just trying to make a point. I don't hear what she's saying. I just hear her tone, so I can't process it. So like being in a relationship for so many years, with someone that you actually, besides love, that you like, you want to always work it out. So when she's like, say, I'm just trying to explain this to you, I'm like, oh, I didn't hear that. So I realized that, wow, I have processing issues. And then, on top of that, I always said I have entrepreneurial ADD, but I really do. My brain never stops. So I share this with the students and they're like, oh my God, me too. And it's fascinating that when you can relate to somebody and say if they have special needs or not, maybe just, your head is all over the place, right? And you just get clarity on what you want to do and achieve these goals, and you do it. It's the most fascinating thing. And I'd like to tell that story about just following your dreams. I'm not that smart. I'm average intelligence, but I want to succeed. I want to do the right thing. I want to make a difference, in the world and everything else. And I know it sounds corny, but that's really who I am. And sharing that with other people and then seeing them do it, that's like the greatest gift, in the world. When you hear people that are successful and say, oh, it's all about giving, sometimes or it's about serving others, so you think it's a crock of shit. But truthfully, it's not. Mm-hmm. Like you get inspired. You feel great about doing that. So I feel really blessed right now. I'm really grateful to for what I'm doing.
Yeah, very cool.
Man. The way I actually met you, interestingly enough, is I met you after Jason Jinx's wake. At the bar when we were all hanging out. So we all come from artistic backgrounds, and we see, people, we leave behind and bad things happen. So, for you to find like a rebirth in these things, I find it inspiring. And, it's funny when we were talking about doing this interview, and I know maybe even when people listen to us, you could do 4 hours on Caffeine, the club. You could do 4 hours on Caffeine, the clothing. You could do 4 hours on the record label, and we know that. But we wanted to make sure that we got down just, even if we're accused of just skimming the surface. I just found what you did and what you contributed to Long Island so fascinating. I even when I saw you in the bar that night, I was like, yo, I've been looking for you, because I was looking up Caffeine to be like, I want to talk to these guys. And, so we appreciate you coming. We appreciate you, giving us everything that you've given and opening up in that way. So
definitely. Yeah, we have a podcast, but we do have one more question. So yeah, we always end up with our last question. The name of the show is If I Ruled the World. So today we ask you, Alex, if you ruled the world, what would that look like?
Where everyone was treated equal, in a sense where you didn't judge anybody, and that they were able to just do what they wanted to do and be the best version of themselves without being judged. Because a lot of people hold back on sort of their dreams because they feel like they're going to get made fun of. And imagine if some of the people that we know, whether it's anybody that didn't discover certain things, or didn't create the iPhone, or didn't create, whatever it is. Okay. So if you're just not judged on your ideas and your dreams, that would be the ideal, world, for me, is just sort of finding sort of your niche, following your dreams, and just without being judged.
That's a world we see at Caffeine Academy. So,
much.
Alex, thanks so much for coming. And
well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Definitely. From this episode, I think we'll definitely do a part 2.
We're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into some of those stories. Something about the bus, something about caffeine, something about voodoo.
Oh boy, oh yeah, a lot of great stories.
Yeah.
Man, thanks for doing it. So,
all right, thanks for having me.
If I ruled the world, I love 'em, baby.